Hi, everybody. Um, my name is Camille Nebeker. I'm a faculty member at UC San Diego in family medicine and public health, and I'm in the division of behavioral medicine. And I'm also a research ethicist with the Scripps Translational Science Institute and working on the Precision Medicine All of Us research program. So, two pretty big jobs. And one thing I really want to clarify is I'm a research ethicist. I dabble a little bit in bioethics only because of human subjects connections, but my area is really much more anchored into research ethics. And a couple years ago, and this is a slide that I've used before in case you've seen one of my talks, this is a slide that I got from Kevin Patrick, who has really done a nice job in sharing how the multidimensional aspects of data that we can access today that is so much different than anything that we've ever had before. So right now we can access people's information in real time. We can mine Twitter data. We can do things like do interventions on Facebook. We can access electronic health records. And what's been interesting for me as somebody that's interested in ethics is all the funding from NIH that focuses on ethics has really focused on the genome. And in fact, the Human Genome Project has dedicated 5% of their funding to study what's called ethical, legal, and social implications. But there are so many other ethical issues that cut across all of these other dimensions, and yet there is no dedicated funding to support research in these areas. So for somebody like me that doesn't work in genomic research, I'm a public health behavioral scientist, there's no dedicated funding. And so we need to kind of start thinking about how to make that shift and make ELSI, or what they call ethic, legal, and social implications, something that is more broad, or think about coming up with a different acronym. So what got me into this area, and mHealth has a really interesting connotation for me, because do any of you notice that I'm wearing a camera right now that's pointing at you? So this is a camera, it's a wearable camera, and it's what got me into this area of research that my colleague in behavioral science, Dr. Jacqueline Kerr, called me in before I ever even started at UCSD. She said, I need some consult on ethics. I don't know what to do. I've got an R01 waiting in the wings. I'm using wearable sensors, and the IRB won't approve my study. Do you have any ideas for me what to do? And so I went and spoke to them, and so I was saying, well, show me your data, show me what you're doing, let me see what's happening. But that led me to this term of mHealth. And she said, I don't do mHealth. She didn't see her role in science as something that fell under that umbrella. I don't know if she thinks of it differently now, but it caused me to think about, well, what is mHealth? And what do we have in common with the kinds of tools and structures and methods? And so I came up with this acronym, and I call it MIST. And it's for mobile, which is your phone, different kinds of technologies, different apps that you can use to capture personal health data. Imaging, which is this wearable camera. Pervasive sensing, which is your watch. Location tracking, which when I first started into this was not something that you had on your phone. It was something that you wore on a belt around your waist. And then the social media, the kind of research that people are able to do by tapping into Twitter data or doing these interventions on Facebook. So this is a whole new area, and I wanted to figure out, how do I capture it into one thing that can fall under an umbrella? And already that is obsolete. So this is just 3.5 years ago I get into this, and these tools, we now have 3D printing, we have artificial intelligence, we have virtual reality. So these are all different kinds of techniques and technologies and strategies that are being used to intervene on human health. And so we've added the plus plus to our acronym because it's kind of like a programming language like C+. And I work with a computer scientist, so that's where that came from. But anyway, how many of you would have wanted me to disclose that I'm wearing a camera that's pointing at you in this setting? Oh, okay. That's a lot of you that really think that you have a right to consent to have me image you. So imagine I'm just a public citizen standing here talking to you in a public university. paid by state funds, do I have an obligation to disclose in that case? What if I'm a research participant and everything that's being recorded on this camera is being used for research purposes? I'm the subject of the study, I'm the participant, I agreed to wear the camera. They want to know what I'm doing in my everyday life, how I behave in the wild, so that they don't have to rely on my self-report, which has objectivity issues. They don't want to wait until I have to come to the lab to see how I behave. So the camera can capture what I do, where I do it, what's in front of me, but then you become the bystander that Tiffany alluded to. So I'm capturing information about you that's being used for research, so under what circumstances should you be able to consent? So this is not on. I just wanted to see what you thought. But you can obviously tell that this is an issue of concern, and under what circumstances do we as researchers have an obligation to disclose when we might be able to be capturing data about other people. And this is just an example of the kind of different technology. So that's a different version of a camera that's called a sense cam that you see up there. You can see right below it somebody in their home who's wearing a sense cam, and you can see what they're eating. So if this were a nutrition study and you're trying to reconcile what somebody thinks they're eating with what they actually are eating, you can see, what's in front of them. So this camera takes an image about every 7 seconds. And so by the end of the 1-week study, there were about 30,000 images in the data set that came on this camera. So you can see a lot of the everyday. The GPS tracking device was used in the study that I'm talking about to see where were people when they were active. And you can see the kind of data right below that waist-worn GPS device that shows an individual that's traveling quite a bit in and out, around and about. And again, bringing up the risk of having data subpoenaed is something that you should think about, because you are capturing information that puts somebody at a point in time when something else could have happened. It could also implicate them as, I'm at the bar, I'm drinking a couple of beers, I get in my car, I text somebody, I hit somebody, and now I've just recorded myself in a crime. Can this be used against me? So there are some interesting new questions. And, the smartphones are becoming ubiquitous. We have all kinds of information that we can gather from them. Different apps brings up the issue that Tiffany raised about whether it's a research device, which this is a research device where the control of downloading content data is the researcher's prerogative. They don't have to go through a third party to get access to the data. But when using commercial devices, you have to go through a third party to access the data. And there's a lot of new ethical issues around consent and data ownership that arise when you have to negotiate with a company, as well as how do you tell people who you're engaging in a study what they needed to know that was in the fine print of the terms and conditions and the privacy statement that nobody reads, and they're not designed to be understood to begin with. What's your obligation in conveying information that's in the terms and conditions that could place that person at additional risk of potential privacy loss? And the last one, the social media, it's ripe for understanding illness. We can now identify disease spread. A colleague over at San Diego State University has used Twitter to predict or to basically identify flu epidemic, converses with the CDC to help them understand the spread of disease based on tweets. My colleague, Nadir Weevil, who's a computer science and engineer, has been looking at Twitter data to identify HIV hotspots. So using natural language processing with public accessible tweets, he is now able to reverse engineer and basically identify who is either HIV positive or, because of where they are in their network, has a high likelihood of becoming HIV positive. So these are the new kinds of things that we're starting to talk about. We have an incredibly flawed informed consent process as it stands right now with even the most traditional types of research. People don't know what research is. The only other time they've ever completed a consent form is when they've been seeking medical care and they don't really have a choice of whether or not to sign that consent form. It's a document that most people are unfamiliar with, and so it doesn't come with a table of contents, so you really don't know what you're getting into. And so there's a research literacy issue, there's a technology literacy issue, and there's a data literacy issue that are new as a result of using mobile technologies as a research tool. There's also a really big challenge for IRBs. And how many of you have tried to navigate the IRB with mobile health, digital health strategies? And how many of you have found that you are partially responsible for educating them at the front end of what they need to know to be able to review your studies? And that is new and different. And so while you've always tried to shape and explain what the risks and benefits are in a study, now they don't even know to ask you what they should be asking you to evaluate the probability and magnitude of harm or evaluate the benefits. And so that's a problem. And the bycatch or the bystander that I'm talking about, they are not covered by the common rule. They're not really considered when we think about the ethical principles of respect, beneficence, and justice. So these are kind of, again, new things that we need to be cognizant of. And then a lot of the data that's being captured is so granular and it's so voluminous, and it is not always connected to an electronic health record, and HIPAA doesn't apply. And there are no new rules or standards or governing bodies that are telling us what should we be doing with this data. So this camera captures a lot of data. You can infer some health information from it. There are wearable sensors that you can wear around your head that are, measuring your EEG that is being used to infer behavior and health information that's not part of an electronic health record. So how do we store that? And I've been on an IRB for 20 years now. Oh, we keep it in a locked cabinet behind this door and only these people have access to it. And that was just the standard for so many years. You'd see these two sentences and the IRB, oh, sounds good. That sounds good. But now it's really a different story because this could be potentially pretty sensitive data. GPS data, well, I'll tell you about that in just a second. The other thing that's happening is that we have a very unsettled regulatory landscape. So for the last 30 plus years, we've used the same regulations, and there's been a lot of upset throughout the social behavioral sciences community, because how do these map to the biomedical sciences, and where's the connect and disconnect? So there's always been this percolation of it doesn't apply to us really, or it's too conservative, or it's hindering our progress. But now they've just changed the common rule. So the new common rule will go into effect in January. It's got a whole different set of standards for informed consent, what qualifies as minimal risk. But the people that were writing the new version were not cognizant of the kind of research that we're talking about today. So when they say, if you return results to a participant, your study goes automatically from a minimal risk study to a greater than minimal risk study that requires review by a convened committee. Now they're thinking about the traditional, you put somebody in an MRI and you observe that there's a mass in their brain and something has to happen, and what's that going to be? When we're thinking about how do we use information about daily physical activity or nutrition or heart rate to help people self-manage, and it could be on a minute-to-minute feedback loop. It could be daily, but it's a return of a result that now just because you want to give people information or help them access information about themselves, it's immediately escalated. So what I'm saying here is that what they thought they were doing doesn't map to what we're starting to see happening. And so these are all the different things that are going on that I'm actually working on a quantified yourself study. I'm part of it because we're trying to figure out where should the ethics fit into self-study. Do I self-consent? How do I self-evaluate the risks? So, these are new conversations that we're starting to have, and I think they're just tons of fun, and I'm hoping that you do too. So what do you do when the IRB says no? How many of you want to get some help on how to change the behavior of the IRB? So this is where this is possible. It really is possible, and this is where we're going with this. So when Jacqueline's study, when she got the no, you can't do this, you know, your study looks beautiful. This is what she gets back from the IRB after the second or third round. You know, just take the camera out and go do your study. It's going to be fine. Well, she's doing an observational study, and this is a critical part of her measurement. And they're saying no, and she has other grants coming down the pike. So, you know, I consult with her, and I said to her when I looked at the data that I showed you a second ago, I said, the IRB has no idea what you're doing. Absolutely no idea. And with all of the experience I've had with IRBs, when they see something they don't understand, they get incredibly conservative. And they either say no or they try to change the design. And you can go through this for 6, 8, 9 months. And so I said, you've got to start gathering the empirical evidence to help the IRB understand risk. And she crossed her eyes and looked at me and she says, you know what, that's not in our wheelhouse. We can't do that. And I thought, well, if you don't do it, it's going to keep happening. And if it's happening to you, it's going to be happening to everyone in this community. So, you know, you get at the ethics of, well, what's your responsibility to enact change? Well, she says, can you do it? Can you help us with this? And I thought, well, that's not really in my wheelhouse, but let's make that happen. So I said, let me piggyback on one of your studies and I'll survey your people and we'll see about how do we get, you know, information from folks that are in these studies. What do they think about it? Did they think consent was fine? Did they experience risk? Did somebody, when they saw that they were wearing a camera, club them on the head because they were so offended? You know, it was all of that kind of stuff. And we published that in Translational Behavioral Medicine about 6 months ago. Then we just published in JMIR a study that we did where we wanted to look at the differences across Somali, Latino, and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders. Those are 3 independent studies. They weren't coordinated. So this is not a research paper, but it's a you know, perspectives piece that culture matters. And if you don't pay attention to what people are, where they are in their culture, you're not going to get data. And in one case, the people that promised that they were going to wear the Fitbit just took it off, and they didn't wear it for the whole week. And when the researcher comes back to get the data, there's nothing there. So engaging the community that you're planning to use in your studies at the front end is really important. I did one of my first studies was to look and see what the IRB is doing. How are they evaluating risk specific to this camera and GPS devices? And we looked at eight studies, all happening at UC San Diego. They were reviewed by 4 different IRBs. They all had those devices in common. They all had different ideas about what the risks were and how to manage them. None of them thought that GPS was a concern. They didn't understand how sensitive that data could be. They were mixed on the camera. Some didn't have any thought about it. Others said get rid of it. So, I mean, that's a problem. That's a problem in an institution, one institution. There are 6,000 registered IRBs across the U.S., and this can just escalate. So we looked at the ecosystem to see how much of this research is happening, where it's happening, who's doing it, why, what they're doing. And so this is the breakdown across our MIST acronym. And my student, Sarah, used these keywords. She did a search of the NIH reporter to try to figure out what's happening out. What is NIH funding? And how much of their budget is being spent on mobile health? And is it growing? How has it changed? So she looked at 3 time points, 2005, 2010, and 2015. And it's been fascinating. So just in this one 2015 period, what we see are the top universities that are getting the funding for doing mobile health. And what I found interesting about this is that it's not just 1 or 2 PIs, that it's a lot of PIs, and it's a number of projects. So that tells me that it's growing. It was a 13-fold increase between 2005 and 2015, and it now represents a little over 1% of NIH's budget. So stakeholders are really important, and knowing this was a problem, I submitted a grant to explore this and it didn't get funded. So I wanted to look at this from various stakeholders, including patients and physicians, clinicians. But I spoke to the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation about this at a meeting where this tension was just so palatable. And I said, I have a proposal. I can start working on this. And they said, can you, and this is thanks to Donna for telling me, go talk to them and tell them you can do this. They said, can you focus on 2 stakeholder groups? We don't have enough money for doing everything. So we have focused on researchers and IRBs, and researchers broadly, computer scientists, behavioral scientists, social scientists. And we created the Connected and Open Research Ethics, and this is where you guys come in. This is where we are building a community. It's not just about me telling you what I think you should do. You guys know a whole lot more than I do about certain parts of this ecosystem. You know a lot more than the IRB does. So this is creating a community where we all have a shared interest in shaping the ethics of the 21st century research. So we've done this in a participatory way. We asked people, what is it you want? What would help you? What would you want to do to contribute to this community? And so we've created a network, and our network has almost 400 people, and it's global. I had no idea that this was going to get this big, but there's huge interest in this. And we have a forum. They also said, this is what we want. We want to be able to ask each other questions. And if our community doesn't know the answer, maybe a privacy expert will chime in, or somebody that's a technologist will chime in, or somebody from the regulatory community can chime in. So the forum is where that happens. We also have a resource library. How many of you are working right next door to somebody that is like struggling with their IRB approval, and you've just gotten one approved, but you don't talk to each other, and you're using the same methods? Well, the resource library is where you go in and you share your protocol. You share your protocol and you share your consent language in a way that is safe for you. It doesn't violate your intellectual property, but it helps your community navigate this. And the reason Robert Wood Johnson Foundation funded this is that their grantees were taking upwards of 6 to 8 months to get an IRB approval, and it's costing them money. So this is what we look like. That was about 8 months ago. I think it looked like the electoral map for a while. And so I think any of you who are from the Midwest need to get on board and join the Connected and Open Research Ethics. WashU people. I think you might not be listed on there. So again, this is just the U.S., but we have people in 14 different countries that are using mobile health and that want to collaborate and make this a better process. So this is just an example of our directory. You can sign in on that page. You can sort by alpha order. You can sort by when people signed up. You can find people that you want to talk to. You can see where they're from, and it's a really diverse community. I gave this talk, a similar version, back in at a conference that John Kane and Tom Insel hosted. And Tom Insel, who was at the National Institutes of Mental Health, directing that institute, had gone over to Google's Verily, and he saw what I was doing, and he said, can you come talk to us at Verily? So I went to Verily in November and talked to the team there, and they said we had no idea we needed to think about some of these things, and we learned about the core, and we've been on it, and we've been looking at resources, and I didn't know that they were on it. I couldn't tell, but I wanted to know that they were on it. So I've now made it so that if you want to access the resource library, you have to sign up as a member. And that way we have a little bit of control over who's going in and who's doing what. And because it can be somewhat labor intensive to upload your content, if you don't want to do that, we have people that will help you. We'll have people that do it for you. And they are really good about editing things. So this is where people are answering questions. This is the resource library. You can see it sorts by, again, the NIST acronym, but also you can pick tabs for uploading protocol, uploading consent. And again, because this is a participatory process, you're driving the bus on this. And what you need to do is join this community, take a picture of that. And I put all of our papers up on the slide deck. So I hope to see you on the network, and thank you very much.